So, guys, everybody, welcome JTodd and Gordon from CrowFall. Some of the amazing leads over there. JTodd, if you don't mind, just go ahead and introduce yourself to anyone that might not know, and your title and everything. Uh-oh, he's muted.
There we go. Is that better?
Yes.
All right.
Success.
We're going to not touch that again. I'm JTodd Coleman. I am the creative director of CrowFall, and I'm one of the two founders of Artcraft. The other one is also on my screen right now.
Nice.
Awesome.
Right. I'm Gordon Walden. I'm the old game maker, very old game maker, and I'm the other co-founder of Artcraft.
Well, guys, we really appreciate y'all coming on. We've had a lot of fun playing CrowFall and kind of getting into the community, kind of, learning the game. It's a little bit surreal that you guys are actually here because I backed the game before I even created Down to Quest.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. I had seen some of the really cool like YouTube videos you guys were doing describing it, how it's a throne war and like, it's specifically the game of Risk and how like if you come back every year to the same game of Risk, it's like boring and it's awful, or a game of Monopoly that your father is just owning on every year, and no one can tear away the hotels off of Broadway, and how you're trying to implement that or get MMOs away from that so that it's always a fresh thing and it's something new and new people can pick it up. So I was like, I'm back in this thing, and then I created Down to Quest, I think like 7 or 8 months later, and then now here we are. So it was really cool. Yeah, very surreal for me. Toasty is a good friend I met playing Smite, and we just, we're like, hey, I think we should do this. I think we could play video games for a living, and no one else had done a house, So, well, there was one other house, Streamer House, but no one had done a secondary house, and I was like, this is a wide open space for us, and now
cool.
here we
are. Are y'all in Colorado?
We are Colorado Springs.
That's cool. I'm in Leadville, Colorado right now.
Oh,
nice.
Really?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What are you doing up there?
We just, my son is a rock climber, so we needed to get out of Texas because there's no good rock climbing in Texas.
They're all on the ground.
True. Yeah.
So we thought we'd take a break, and Leadville is nicely situated in between like everything. Like you can get everywhere from here, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
if you guys have some time, feel free to come down to Colorado Springs, and we'll show you the house and the setup, and
Some tacos or something.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, I make some pretty good barbecue too. So,
Nice.
But let's just go ahead and jump right into it.
Absolutely.
And get it rolling. Welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out. I love the CrowFall emote, the crow heart in there. That's a great emote. So the first question we wanted to ask, and I think this is kind of a standard question for most studios nowadays, is how is the studio holding up during COVID, and how is COVID affecting the schedule for development?
Yeah, it's a little rough. Do you want to start on this one, Gordon? Do you want to take it first?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, has it had an effect, and has that effect been negative? Sure. Anytime you change anything about your production methodology, you're asking. Anytime you ask people to change, what happens? They have to go through a change process. There's all the entire grieving process of the way it used to be versus the way it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always been a very in the studio. We have done very little external stuff, and suddenly overnight we had to make everybody external.
Yeah.
That was. Yeah, it's been challenging. My estimate. Todd thinks I'm an optimist, which I must be because I make games. But
That's true.
It feels like it's cost us 15 or 20% of our productivity,
Ooh.
and it also feels like the managers are working 50% more time.
More
Yeah.
communication.
And that's better than at the beginning. At the very beginning, I bet it was more like 30 to 50. It was pretty rough you can see Gordon's the only one in the office. He's actually there right now, and the pit behind it was empty.
Yeah.
And that's
the only one
a quarter of our space that's behind me. So,
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
we're still paying for that, by the way. We're still paying for that. We don't want to. But
Yeah. It's
I
please.
would say I can understand that being rough.
Well, hopefully, I mean, it seems like you guys are at least kind of still somewhat on track. The beta came out not too long ago. You guys made it into beta. And that's, I got the email from my backing, email account that was like, hey, it's in beta now. Try it out. See what you like about it. And I was like, this is about to happen. So that's really good. Hopefully everyone there is staying healthy too, and social distancing, masks, and all that. But we've noticed that COVID is definitely one of those things that like you can kind of tell is affecting games all over this year. You have so many delays, so many like we're gonna push it back a little bit more, and I'm sure even with a small development team, you guys are still handling
We thought
that.
we literally thought we'd be here 3 months ago. We thought we'd be into beta about 3 months ago.
Wow. Okay. So you're about like 2.5 months behind, roughly, give or take.
Well, it's a continuous process.
Yeah,
That's what
sure.
I would say. I mean,
That's fair.
every day we have a series of problems that it would be so easy if I could grab the right 6 people and put them in one room at one moment and go, okay, here's the deal. Here's the drill. Let's go and get after it.
Yeah.
And now we have to kind of coordinate, see, they're not online right this second. Oops. And not being together, it's different too. The intensity,
Right.
You guys know the video stuff. It's awesome, but it's not like real life.
Yeah, and you don't feed off of each other's passions and motivations nearly as much. And someone gets in and they're like, "Oh, look what I did! This is really hype." And it's like it's hard to tell that through either a Discord call or an email, especially an email. Well, that's good. Hopefully everyone stays healthy and you guys keep pushing through because I think you guys are doing a really great job so far. From what we can tell, there's updates every week or every other week that are large and small ones in between that are kind of coming consistently, and you guys are addressing problems really quickly. So we think you guys are doing a great job during COVID.
Well, that's
Hopefully
great.
it doesn't
Well, the
affect
good
you.
news is that it is working, right? I mean, it's maybe not as efficient or as effective as we would like, but we are making forward progress. And if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have probably said that was impossible. Like I was not a believer in remote work, and this is kind of I guess we'll try it because I don't have a choice. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So question 2 that I got here, Tosi, you want to?
Oh, so yeah, sure, I can go.
This
So
one is the big one.
the big a lot of the things we've gotten pretty much as we've been playing and as we've been building our guild is we've noticed there's a big kind of mindset that if you're not in a Zerg, if you're not in a big giant clan or guild, you're gonna just get overrun, And we wanted to see if you guys had any ways. We understand you guys are working on alliances, but are there any other ways you're thinking maybe to offer benefits to being a smaller guild, or just offering a way for a smaller guild to keep up with some of those, 200-person guilds?
Yeah, and
it's definitely it's a tough problem for sure. But you mentioned alliances. I guess I'll say that is kind of the first answer that's going to be coming out, and literally we're trying to get that out like this morning, tomorrow. Like we're working on it right now.
That's gonna be awesome.
The version has already gone to test, and the initial 3 world types, the Eternal Kingdoms, which is the kind of guild and personal housing, God's Reach, which is the newbie island, and the Infected, the 3 faction. Those are already out and running on live now. So we're down to just dregs, but that's where alliances matter. So
right, yeah.
So we're trying to get that out right now. So that'll actually help, but I don't think it's a full solution to the problem. Frankly, I think that this is a problem that's kind of going to be there forever, and it's somewhat numbers. It's also just a skill difference, right? Sometimes you can have a guild that they don't Zerg with numbers, they Zerg with just the fact that they are so well organized and so committed to the game that
some
they
really big killers.
So and we've definitely seen quite a bit of that. The problem for me as a designer is it's a tough one because I don't like artificial constraints, right? So I could right now put in a max guild cap that said if you enter dregs with your guild, that's fine, but you can only have either 40 people total in your guild that are allowed in this campaign, or you can have 20 at max at any time.
Right.
I could do that right now, but the guilds would kind of hate it.
Yeah.
So
I can see the big guilds not being happy with that.
I think that eventually we'll end up doing some of that. Like we'll do a tournament mode where we'll say, it's invite only, meaning you have to have won in a previous campaign and you can only bring in 20 people at a time or something like that.
I like that.
I just didn't want to put that as it seemed very a very draconian change to make on generic campaigns out the gate, because it's telling people they can't play with their friends or can't play the way that they want to play. And that seemed like not a great option. So.
Yeah, game your way is definitely kind of a big thing that we kind of talk about here because we have so many people that take over. I stream a 6-hour shift and then someone else takes over for me. Well, maybe that person doesn't want to game anything like what I want to game. Maybe they don't even want to play CrowFall. Maybe they do. So we totally understand the game your way. And we were asking in chat quite a bit. I was in there just like, hey, what are questions we can ask? And that one came up quite a bit. Do they plan on balancing Zergs versus small guilds? And when we were asking it, we got a little bit of, negative feedback, I think, from some of those guys you're talking about that are like very skilled and very knowledgeable. And we weren't really asking for ourselves. We have a decent sized guild. I think we went from like 0 to 52 within a couple weeks, we're at like 55 now. We're specifically asking, this kind of gets to my next question, is like for the new players coming in, new players that come in, they go through the first 2 chapters, maybe it's 3 by the time they get in. They're guildless right now, so they don't have like a bunch of friends to play with. They go out and they start trying PvP, and they get discouraged instantly when they meet a group of 22 wild rhinos or something like that, and you're like, oh, this is not gonna end well, or a Zyback, like someone who is just like the top tier duelist and slayer, and he's just shooting you, and you're not, there's nothing you can do. But of course, like you said, you can't just like flip the switch to the other direction and kind of cater to them. So were there any other plans other than Alliance that you guys are thinking about? And of course, we know that campaigns in the future there's going to be multiple campaigns, so that should split up hopefully some of the larger guilds, like, oh, we're going to try and go, to every 5 or all these 5 campaigns so we can win, in each one and bring some stuff back. There were a few things, of course, losing the casuals to the hardcore aspect before they kind of become hardcore. Like, how do you guys see making that change for casual to hardcore in the future? Like, is there some plans?
The approach there that we were hoping to use was graduated campaigns, right? So you've got the God's Reach, which is perfectly safe, and you've got the Eternal Kingdoms, which you can set to be perfectly safe, or you can do duels there or whatever. So that was kind of the protected area of the universe. What we were hoping was that the Infected, which is really kind of that Dark Age of Camelot style 3 faction, would provide an entry ramp into the guild versus guild. So that the worst thing that I think the worst experience you can have in the game right now is a non-guilded player jumping straight into a guild versus guild campaign, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. It's like, hey, I'm a single player, I'm going to sign up for this football league, I'm going to try and take on full teams. It's probably not going to go great for you. So that's why we created Infected, because it is you're basically auto assigned into a team. It's one of 3, and the goal there was to make it on a risk reward spectrum to where it's like you've taken one step into PvP, the rewards are far better than what you got before. The risk is a little higher. The penalty of death is not that severe. So we were trying to basically kind of use it as an on-ramp and also as a recruiting grounds, so that then you could, once you really got your legs under you, you could then step into the deeper into the swimming pool. So that was kind of the idea.
Got you, the crawl, walk, and run kind of mentality.
And creating a transitionary bridge where you're taking those steps when you choose to. You're taking that on that more risk, but you're also getting more reward for doing it, trying to entice you into that. So it's a little tough right now because we're only in beta, so we don't have a giant amount of player numbers. So that makes it a little hard because we don't have as much granularity. And when you only have enough players logging in at peak to support, you've got 4 world types minimum plus US and EU. Right there, you're starting to subdivide your players. And the downside of a PvP game is you need a certain amount of critical mass or the whole thing just doesn't work. If I'm just running around and never see anybody, that's not a fun game. So we've been taking measured steps towards that, where we'll watch the player numbers go up, and then we'll add a new world type, and that kind of spreads everybody out a little bit more, and then we try and let it build up a little bit more before we add another world type. So anyway,
that's awesome. Speaking of new players,
a very challenging problem, frankly, that I've never seen before in an MMO.
You should speak to the shadow some too.
We actually had someone in chat just say, "When will the shadow come back?"
Yeah, there's another world band type actually that's supposed to be in there as well, which is actually there's 2 that I'd like to do, but there's probably only 1 that we're going to have time for. The nice thing is we made these campaigns on knobs, so we can pretty easily mix and match them. Most of my hesitation for putting up new world types has actually been, I don't want to spread the players too thin, right? Too little butter on too much bread. But the shadow was it's a hybrid that sits in between the Infected and the Dregs. It's not guild versus guild, it's still 3 faction, but it does have a campaign beginning, middle, and end with victory cards. So it's kind of it's a harder core than what the Infected provides right now, but it's not so guild focused that if you join into one of the defaults.
Do you
feel
lose
like you
your
just can't
gear
win.
in the shadow? Like if your inventory, is that up for grabs, or is that the same in Infected where they can't
Right
get your
now,
inventory?
I think that the setting would probably be inventory drop, but not equipment. At some point, I really want to try a version of Dregs where it's all equipment drop.
That'd be awesome.
It's
That's
pretty
wild.
harsh. Is the
Yeah.
What
problem.
about
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
like a
And
percentage of like you have a 5%,
Or
you
when your
know,
durability goes down to
for sure.
0, they get a
Yeah.
half durability version or something.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
something-
Putting a percentage drop on it actually would be awesome. I think that would
Yeah.
be really good.
Because I
One
think
of the
then
things that
people risk versus reward, they contemplate, they're like, ooh, do I really want to go in on this fight because I have a chance of losing, you know? And so I think that will also push people together, like you said, where it flattens people out and they spread out. I think that will help push people kind of more molehill them together, because it's like, oh, I need to be with friends. I don't need to be taking this fight. Like, I need to find a guild, that kind of thing, you know?
Ooh,
Yeah.
someone in chat just said it could be. They said it could be like RuneScape where you keep your top 3 items, but I can even see maybe having that be part of the crafting. Like if you make it, if like your top 3 items, or even if you craft, put this attachment on something, your 3 items
for
that
sure.
have your 3 items
really
that have a
cool.
blessing or whatever, you don't drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we in
protection.
Shadowbane actually we did item bind. So my first MMO that CrowFall, yeah, you can tell clearly there was a kind of
Oh,
a
yeah.
direct
Just a
DNA
little.
relationship between CrowFall and Shadowbane. On Shadowbane, we actually did item binding. That was our I think that was the one thing that we really added to the to WoW.
Yes.
Like that was one of the features that they tried out that they actually took from us, and I was proud that we got any of them in. But you could basically pick 3 of your items and say these are the 3 that I want to keep, and everything else was dumped. I think that'd be pretty cool. I could also see doing it as one of the god statues that you have in the town. We could have put a blessing on you that increases the percentage chance of you not dropping something. Which would be
that would be
kinda
really cool. Yeah, I think mixing and matching the campaigns in the future with different tiers of that, like maybe it's a percentage here, maybe it's 3 items here, maybe it's a full equipment drop here, would really, like, once you have the player base, would really help, like, kind of even things out for people who are like, you know what, I don't want to go like do a gainer off the high dive quite yet. I'm just gonna go swim some laps over here in the safe section. But speaking of player base, we actually have some keys to give away. Toast, you wanna run a giveaway? Yeah, we'd love to get some more players in there.
Giveaway going for you guys.
Yeah, we're gonna get that going while we work on the next question. So the next question I had was optimization versus content. What's the focus and the priority moving forward? Are you guys like really focused on the optimization over content, or are you really like, hey, we want to get that content in there and then small optimizations as we
Why don't you
improve?
take this one, Gordon?
Yeah, let me take the first whack at that.
Yes,
so
sir.
Here's the thing. Most of the people who do content can't do anything for optimization. Most of the people who do optimization work can't do anything for content.
Right.
So it's really not a choice. That's not an A/B choice.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that content people can't do anything to make the game run faster. They can, and we direct that as we need it. But the truth is that those are not. You're not trading one off against the other most of the time. And we have a list of content we know we're going to ship with the game, and we're working down that list right now. So will we have all the content we'd like to have at launch? Of course not. But it's an MMO. We're going to be adding content.
Had every MMO ever, right?
Yeah, right.
No
Yeah.
MMO has ever had enough content at launch.
Exactly.
But like there's stuff that we cut a long time ago that we go, gosh, we really want that, but we know it's going to be post-launch. It's too big. It's just a bridge too far. Some of that stuff.
Yeah, so let me hit the actual question, because the actual question is how much focus are you guys putting on performance? I mean, that's really the issue.
Kinda, yeah.
If we have another 2 mounts or not at launch, or another 3 skins or not, that's not going to make the difference on whether the game is successful at launch.
True.
If we pick up another 20 frames per second in a large player fight, that's going to make a giant difference on how successful we are.
Very true.
So I think performance to me is now there's 2 parts to that. One is client and the other is server. The server is actually holding up pretty well right now. Like we're seeing player engagements, even over forts, we're seeing 100 on 100. Or not 100 on 100. We're seeing 100 plus people in. I'd love to get to 100 on 100. That's kind of my goal, is 200 players in a single area fighting.
That would be awesome.
The client can't do it yet, but the server actually is right there. I think our server cap is right now set to 175. Is that right, Gordon?
Yep.
So the
okay.
server's actually pretty damn close. The client is not close at all, and we've got to fix that. But we have top men working on it.
Top men, I love it. That's the way.
So, I mean, we've seen 175 person fights, though.
Yeah, we have for sure.
Yeah.
Because we hit the cues. The cues kick in. So
and it's
And
tough. I've
the
been
war
in the
stories.
middle of them, filming them, and
Yeah.
I'm down in the teens and 20s when that's happening.
For sure. I think a lot of people are definitely there. I think some people are hesitant to jump in currently because they're like, oh, I don't know if they can get this right. But from what I've seen from the beta alone, when you guys launched the beta to now, I've seen really small increments of increasing optimization, and I really think that's a great thing because I very rarely have I actually felt like, oh man, after this update there was a step back. If it's felt like every time it's like 1 or 2 steps forward and very rarely a step back, and I think that's to be commended because that's really tough. Like you guys said, like if you're in the teens on FPS with a huge fight going on, like a few steps forward over 2 or 3 weeks is a huge jump, compared to, of course, everybody would love to see it, worth the 60
I mean, the
to
main thing the
frames.
audience probably wants to know more than anything else, how seriously are we taking it? Pretty freaking seriously. And, this milestone that we're starting now, that as this one ships is all about optimization on the tech side. And we have some initiatives going on after that we're already planning with Unity and, to get some help there.
That's
awesome.
We
That's
are
fantastic.
pushing this engine in places it hasn't gone before.
yeah, it's not like this is a common thing, right? It's not like, hey, let's build an MMO that's going to have 100 on 100 large engagements with castle sieging and stuff like that in Unity, and it's like it's been done dozens of times before. We're definitely pushing the engine, but we think we've got a ways to continue pushing. We've got a lot more tricks up our sleeves. So we're not there yet. It's
That's
also
beautiful.
when you're still in the middle of content production and you're still figuring out your design, it's actually very hard to optimize because you make assumptions based on the game as it is, and you add a big new feature, and suddenly those assumptions are all gone, and you might have wasted time.
Right.
So there's a reason that optimization usually comes at the tail end of a project. It's just in the weird position of being a kickstarted, crowd-funded project. People are with you, watching you develop. You're not just cooking a meal; you're building the kitchen. And then cooking the meal. And so people are seeing all this build up that usually is completely hidden. Usually the developer shows up and is like, hey, we've been working on this for 5 years, but you've never seen it before. Here it is at the 90% mark. And so you're just watching that last for 10%, when in actuality, it was a mountain of work to get you to that point.
I was watching y'all's the 4-way you guys did yesterday with the PAX on the PAX panel with Steven Sheriff and the guys from Pantheon and then Amazon, and I noticed that the Amazon guy was like, oh, we can't tell you a bunch, and I'm like, ooh, that's not good. Like, I don't like that. Like, I love the transparency that you guys are showing, and I think that that's really going to help in the future because I feel like if you can get that optimization there, which I feel, you seem very confident. I think you guys have been doing a great job with it. The content, because you've crowdsourced and been so transparent, is going to be great because that's the building component.
People know what they're working for, kind of deal, or waiting for.
To it with the optimization.
Well, just a simple example of that is 6 months ago, our castles didn't have 12 buildings in them, right?
Oh, okay.
And now there's a system. Why do you want those buildings? You want them because it's going to improve your defenses. It's going to make it.
They provide services. They provide guards, right? Now you get to build and pick what guards you want in your town. That wasn't there before. So it's hard to say what slice of the, if you have every frame, 12.7% is taken by guards. It was hard to optimize that before you had those guards.
Exactly, yeah. But you knew you wanted them, and like you were saying, 6 months ago they weren't there, and now they are. So that's fantastic.
We're starting to. That's the nice thing is when we started, right? The list of wants was massive, and now if you actually look at the game we built and the list of wants has gotten pretty small at this point,
great.
Right? Now, that doesn't mean the game is balanced, and we have a massive amount of class design and balance stuff is the other big focus of the next version is we're doing an overhaul of the meta, really. And the marching orders I had for the design team was go back, and I literally told them, go back and look at Shadowbane. I want that level of customization and configuration of our races and our classes and our disciplines. Because Shadowbane was, I still think it's one of the things I'm proudest of, is it was unique in that it was a completely open-ended character build system. I mean, you could build a centaur, gladiator, warlord, hunter, bounty hunter war,
Yeah.
like this ridiculous scout. It's like ridiculous list of things that made up your class. And if you were like, I'm all those things, except instead of scout, I'm a werewolf. There's a totally different character build. So
Exactly,
we're gonna go back to that now, and I think you guys are gonna see it. It's a little bit risky because it means the game is gonna get even more deep, right? And depth
deep is good.
kind of goes,
Yeah.
depth goes hand in hand with complexity a lot of times. We've suffered from that as we have massive depth of systems and nothing that explains to you how those systems work.
Yeah.
So we're happy to fix that now.
Like optimization, that's signaling of how, and signposting of all the stuff in the game, so you kind of know what it is, and the final UI always comes late too, which is seems back asswards from a player standpoint, but it's the nature of it. If you start doing that stuff early, you're constantly revising it as the game changes.
Yeah, the new player experience is a great example of that. If you build your new player experience early, every time you make any change to anything, it breaks because it's a very specifically scripted system. So it's like, and then they click on this, and then they have to walk over here and click on this. Well, if either of those things changes, the whole tutorial's broken. So that's why you typically save it till the new player experience till the very, very end. But it does mean anybody that logs in before that is basically just kind of dumped. Yeah, exactly. It's like, what the hell is all of this? And there's nothing that tells them because you haven't built it yet.
Well, so far, it's really good. Go ahead.
I wanted to add something, because you were saying like people were worried about jumping in.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. In fact, people who really aren't here to help us get it built probably shouldn't jump in until the soup's cooked.
I've said that in the chat to people.
The kitchen and the meal, right? So
exactly.
So people, our hardy customers, the ones who are playing all the time, are awesome because they're here co-creating the game with us.
Right.
Exactly. They're really driving our development. But again, that's not something that most gamers have the time or energy or inclination for. And it's fine to say, just, hey, come in, play the beta, wait for us to launch and buy then, right?
And actually, what Gordon just said, it's actually very similar to like you guys with your chat stream, right? As you're in constant communication. That's how I feel about our game community, is me and the other designers and even some of the engineers, like we are in constant contact with players because they find bugs that we didn't find. They point out balance problems that we didn't see. They bring up, especially when you're so close to it, a lot of times people will bring up, like they go through the tutorial and they come out of it and they're like, well, I didn't even know you had a passive skill training system. And we're like, oh my God, of course they didn't know that. We didn't tell them.
I was actually wondering when I watched the Lazy Peon video if he even looked at the passive training, because I noticed that he had never pulled it up or talked about it. But he had a lot of good things to say about the game, and I think he was, genuinely interested in it and stuff. But I did notice that he never brought up that passive training skill tree to like look at it and the in depth of it and like how it truly affects your gameplay, especially with like the people who are knowledgeable versus not knowledgeable. Like people are like rushing to necromancy so they can get that next vessel. So they can,
there's some significant power-ups built in there.
There really are.
So, and that's another challenge for us. It's a really cool system. It's got some downsides that we still need to deal with before launch, but it also is just it's largely inscrutable unless you're the kind of person who's like, I'm going to just dig in, or you have a guild. That's the other option, right? Is if you have a guild that actually will tell you, hey, click this, and this, and now let me explain it.
Like let me sit down. But that, and that's what's awesome is you guys really aren't a small dev studio. Maybe you are with the people that you've hired, but like overall you have a massive amount of developers. They're just micro developers, I guess, versus like
it's funny, we're in this weird in between zone, right? Because if you compare us to games like New World or something like that, we're a small studio. If you compare us to an indie studio, really what I consider a really indie studio of 3 guys who are off making their dream on Unity, we're not indie at all. So I hate to even call us an indie studio, but we're definitely not an EA or an Amazon or anything like that.
Yeah, you guys are kind of more of a
I would say the full word independent. I would say
instead
sure.
of an indie.
I'll take that.
All right, so about we were talking about content and optimization. I think we've had a lot of people ask this question. This was probably, I think, the second or third most asked question. The first one, of course, was the Zergs versus the small guilds. This one was instance raids, world events, large-scale PvE. Is there any interest, or are you guys looking at that as like a way to fill gaps, or are you guys really want to keep it straight with the PvP, the guild versus guild faction?
Yeah, so to the degree that we do things like that, like we will have a Spider Queen pop up and it does an announcement across the zone. Spider Queen popped up in H7. Even then, we've tried to make that only happen in a way that drives PvP. I mean, that's effectively that is the game that we set out to make. So while I do think that those are cool systems and they lead to cool games, it's not really our game. And so eventually, longer term, I'm open to adding additional things to CrowFall. But for right now, my focus personally is pretty much a laser focus on build the game that we said we were going to build in Kickstarter. And make those backers happy. Like at the end of the day, if that's what we do and that's all we do is we make those backer happy, then I can look at myself in the mirror and I can say, you know what, we did what we set out to do, and the game will be successful or it won't. So there's a whole bunch of those like kind of siren song, other things that you could go off and do that are all that. Oh my God, it seems like it's right around the corner. We've got 90% of the pieces. Why don't we just stitch that together? And historically, we've always said, no, we've got to keep our eyes focused on the thing that we said we were going to do.
Which is not easy.
And I think me and Toasty ran into how that forces the PvP, because like we're out there in our first our first bigger campaign, because we dabbled in the campaign the last 2 campaigns ago, and then this most recent one we were like, okay, we want to get into it, we want to give it a shot, see what's up, and we realized that we're kind of hunting chiefs and kings for the weapons and the awesome drops that they have, and that was that forced PvP you were talking about, where like, oh man, we got to stick around and like kind of circle this thing, which leads to more risk of like someone finding us. And like Toasty noticed that at night he was like having a lot of luck.
My favorite thing in the game, I'm a big crafter, and so as something who I craft in almost every game, I have to go get a bunch of materials. And the first time someone showed me about a caravan run, it blew my mind. I was like, that's, especially on campaign, I was like 125 material for just walking a pig down the road. And I didn't realize that it was on the events tab for so long. But I got really lucky, and several nights in a row, I'd run 10 caravans by myself. And then one night, some guy kept getting me. I was like, how are you doing this? And he was like, they have events tabs so people can PvP for these things. And I was like,
to tell you.
I was like, oh, no.
Thanks, guys.
I've just been announcing it the whole time.
And the forts are that way, too. Now, the forts have been set up basically as a nightly PvP activity where you get basically a boatload of materials at once. But because everybody knows when it fires and where it fires, those things are hotly contested. So I like that idea of having different activities geared towards different people with different styles of play. Like some people, they don't want to be in a big fort fight. They do like the idea of I'm just going to do pig runs and I'm going to try and sneak around and get away with it. And that's cool. It's also an anytime activity, right? Whereas forts kind of consolidate people at a particular time, which is really cool. One of the big pieces that we haven't really seen yet, and I think it'll come with mass and a little bit more features and polish, is the Eternal Kingdoms acting as marketplaces as well.
Yes.
To where you'll get people that'll actually get the way the loop is supposed to work is that the best resources in the game that are the best for the crafters are in the most dangerous PvP areas of the game, but the crafters can make the best stuff using that. So it should create a loop where the combatants go and they get the best stuff and they bring them back to the crafters, who then create the best stuff that then they sell to the combatants, who then go get the best. So it's supposed to create that loop, and it's not quite firing. It does fire specifically in these large guilds who know what they're doing. So for them, it's working. It's just that what the problem there is, it's a closed loop. They've recognized that by not selling to anybody else, they have a power gap. They can create an artificial power gap that becomes a very real power gap, right?
Exactly. It's very real. We've experienced how real it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the problem right now. We actually, it's not that we don't have an economy, it's that we have a bunch of individual bubble economies or closed economies.
Right.
And what we don't have is enough mass yet for it to break out of that.
The chains aren't linked to keep that loop like you were talking about going.
Keep the leak going. But we're close. We actually have a lot of
I think you guys are too.
A few of them we're about to add. Like, we just need a little bit of polish right on the Eternal Kingdoms that'll really allow that to fire. Like in terms of how many people can get into them and how often they're up and things like that. We're very glad. We just got chest in literally in this version as well, so that now I can have a lot more containers to store my reagents, my items, and lock chest in my EK. So it's stuff like that you would never think that's a big ticket item, right? Put chest in my kingdom. But it is.
It is, yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah, something. So to piggyback off of what we were talking about earlier, a little bit about the gear and dropping gear if you die, and to kind of attach that to the Eternal Kingdoms, we were wondering and/or thinking. If you guys hear that, sorry, that's one of our alerts. I don't know if you guys heard that or not.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I'm muted.
We have weird alerts that pop off every now and again, but
that's
so
right. At least my family's not wandering around behind me anymore. So that
oh, it's all good.
Hey family,
welcome to coronavirus time.
Say me and you get into a fight and I smack you and you drop like your favorite sword or maybe some of your armor. I think it would be really cool possibly to be able to resell that, or even just tell people like, hey, that's in my vendor now at my Eternal Kingdom. Come visit my Eternal Kingdom and you can buy it back for a price, or even something like a bounty, like for Toasty with crafting. We're thinking like maybe if we could post bounties in our Eternal Kingdom, it's like, hey, we need 100 green wood of this specific wood. If you get it, we'll give you cash, like a reverse vendor system,
Yeah, we allow people to override item names. So that is something in crafting you can do, is you can create a sword, and instead of it being called Iron Sword, you can change the name. Right. So there was a while there where people were putting buy orders by creating an item, changing the name of it, and putting that item for sale on their vendors. And you mentioned Zybeck earlier. There was a while where Zybeck was dropping, congratulations, you were killed by Zybeck tokens on the bodies of people that he would kill, because he basically crafted a bunch of these things and put a signature on it.
That's
and after he would kill somebody, he would drop it on their cairn, which is pretty funny. So
there
are definitely some of those things that I would like to do. We've been churning our way through the must-haves, and we haven't gotten as many of the nice-to-haves as I would like. But those things have a bigger impact than you would think.
Yeah, and like you said, I think overall getting those loops open and keeping them open and keeping people interested. Why are you coming to visit my Eternal Kingdom? Why are you then going to get the good stuff and back? And why are you crafting the better stuff? So I think that's really awesome, and I think that's really great. I think that's very unique to this game versus some other games where you see where it's not as unique because there's so many options for different things. So that makes sense why you guys maybe not want to put raids or world events in there to the extent that they are in other games.
For sure.
Yeah, I guess part of the question I would ask is, can we do it well too? Like, do we, how much time and energy and resources are going to take to actually make this feature not just but actually great? And if the answer is we don't have time to make it great, then I almost would rather say, you know what, other games do that better. Let's concentrate on the stuff that we can do that's unique to us. Like, the fact that every one of our worlds is made up of unique world maps. That's really awesome.
Really cool.
I mean, no other MMO just brings a new server up, and every world, every map is different. So I would rather, if I had the choice to spend between doing a dungeon with a boss or spend that same art time on, let's make another half a dozen variations of our keeps so that every keep is different.
Yeah, and every campaign feels brand new.
Because it would make every campaign feel different, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's great. What you got, Toasty?
So this one's kind of coming out of left field, but you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about some of your previous games with the character development and how like rich you want that to be. Are there any plans to open up classes that certain races don't have? Like maybe seeing a human or a centaur duelist here eventually, or are there any ideas for other classes or other races?
Class combinations, actually. It was just simply a question of time and testing, really. There's no reason we can't. Like, the system allows for it. The biggest limitation there is actually art time, specifically animation time. We
having a centaur shoot guns
out of the spell effects and things like that. The design powers usually go over pretty easily. I will say that when you guys see the next version that's coming, where we've split, it's going to be as fundamental to our build as the time we decided not to do MOBA style archetypes and went with races and classes as two separate choices. It's going to be that big of a change. Like the explosion of build possibilities that are going to come out of this is going to be in the 6 or 7 figures of different. I mean, it's giant. It is a fundamental
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, but I think you hit the point on the animation. So that's the real key. We have so many different rigs, right? So the people, hey, everybody's a human. It's easy to put everything on everyone,
for sure,
right?
That's why all MMOs started going towards everybody's a human or an elf, because it's the same animation set.
That makes sense. Versus like having a Minotaur dig underground and go. Yeah, it's like
Phoenician, Elkin with the back leg with his legs backwards, right? The kind of reverse knee. We went a little crazy on our race class differentiation, and that's not something you see. I mean, even big studios like New World and Ashes, which is actually a bigger project than ours, they don't typically do non-humanoid races anymore because it is
we've noticed
it causes an explosion of art on the back end. But you know,
which is and that's another reason you guys are one of the best. I wanted centaurs.
I wanted centaurs though. So
I love them.
So, dude. Yeah,
I think they're great.
The Ganetians and the Centaurs. Honestly, just for me, that's when I tell people, like, I was talking to my buddies about this game recently. I was like, for me, the coolest thing is that, like, not everybody's just like a human with like, oh, that's a human with a rogue outfit, or that's a human with a wizard outfit. It's like, oh, that's a freaking hamster with guns, or oh, that's a giant minotaur with axes. Like, you see the class almost. Yeah,
it helps with the targeting because now you have racial bonuses that like I was like I want to make a really tanky character for combat so I can like Toasty's the Ganetian. He'll be our loot goblin. We'll give him all the loot when we kill the things, and then if we get jumped, he'll just like eject and get out of there, and I'll be like super tanky and hold him off as long as I can. And I was like, well, why don't I want to be a half giant? Because they get like more bonuses. And they were like, oh, you want to be a stoneborn because he's shorter to the ground and harder to target. So you being a champion pit fighter will be a little bit more beneficial as a stoneborn than you would as getting those just a little bit extra racial buffs of the half giant. And I was like, man, that's a really cool thing that you're added in there just with having like heights and size differences. Like, and then
so you're gonna see that kind of thing explode in this next version. Sorry, Gordon, I didn't mean to talk.
And you said that's coming today, right?
Exactly. You're looking at it that way. Somebody else is looking at it the exact opposite way and going,
right.
No, I really want that racial bonus. I don't care that I'm a little bit taller. And that diversity is kind of what we were always shooting for.
For sure.
Yeah,
in fact,
what
I told the guys is what I want is hard choices. So that's one of the things that I noticed as I'm going through right now with the talent trees is there's a lot of choice there, but it's not a lot of hard choice there, right? What I want is and so what we're going through now, and it's disciplines and talent trees both, is I want it to where when I get a talent point, I've got 3 options ahead of me. And I can't decide because all of them sound so awesome.
Right?
Exactly.
That's what I want out of the system, and we don't get that right now. So that required a pretty significant kind of re-swizzle of everything to get us there. It also meant that we had to take a lot of the smaller benefits. Like, do I really care about 0.3% to this particular stat? No, I don't.
Yeah. Like, anti-crit versus flame damage on my confessor.
But 5% is a big deal. So we went through in this past and we kind of bundled things up into where it's either a combination of a bunch of stuff, so now it feels more impactful, or it opens an entirely new area of gameplay for me.
That's fantastic.
So you'll see it as a preview of what's coming, though. It's really cool. The thing that you just talked about with why would I do a Stoneborn versus a champion versus a centaur, that's about to explode.
It's going to be way harder to make that decision now.
Oh, for sure.
And it's probably going to be more rewarding when you come up with... Go ahead.
Yeah, the good news is that we allow it to happen so fast that it doesn't feel horrible. Yeah, it's just like it's not that big of a deal. And we do have some respec stuff we're going to talk about later as well.
Beautiful.
Respecs, yes. I bricked so many builds.
What I wanted out of the new player experience in the God's Reach was I wanted the player to actually be exposed to all these systems so they would have a jump off point to go, oh, okay, well, now I know where to go look to learn more about crafting. I don't try to teach you all of crafting because there's no way. And a lot of players don't care. If I don't care about crafting, don't make me go through an hour-long tutorial on it. But at least we bump you off of here's a crafting station, here's how recipes work. From there, you should be able to figure it out. What I don't want you to have to do is do that now 20 times. I've already taught you that system.
Yeah.
I don't need to continually teach it to you over and over and over. So we're going to add some of that as well.
So I've played a ton of Destiny too, and that's something that when they added escape this, like I just want to they're the same story mission. I got to replay it over and over again to get now it's on heroic versus normal. Now it's on legendary. Now it's on master. And it's like I just skip this. You've told me that the Cabal are coming for me 100 times now. Like skip it. So I think that's really smart. We do have a really great question in here that's kind of touched on campaigns. And it's from the Colonos, I believe is his name. He's wanting to know if campaign rewards might be tweaked or limited to help maybe reduce the Zergs. So his example is if you have 70 people in a campaign and you win, you only get 30% possibly of the rewards, or like would there be like a
Say it's
we
like a
actually
50.
have limited number of awards, so I have something similar to that. It wasn't an artificial knob that turned it down. And if I did do that, I'd prefer to make it look the opposite. I'd prefer to make it look like a bonus for a small guild; they get more as opposed to a large guild
okay.
turning down. Mathematically, it's identical,
It's
but
the
there's
same,
just
yeah.
it's a certain things as a designer you learn players hate. Somebody asked me about this the other day. They're like, why did you only give me X number of vendor slots in this building? And I said, well, let's say the right answer was 4. If I made a guess and I gave you 2 and later have to come up to 4, you think I'm a hero. If I gave you 6 and later had to pull it down to 4, you hate me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you end up at 4 either way.
Get
but
the
I'd rather
pitchforks and the
play that I'm a
torches.
hero, right? So yeah, I actually have in the campaign rewards design, we have stacked rewards like, hey, the guild who comes in top, you're going to get this unique skin for 10 of your players, just 10. So
That's
if you
cool.
want to have 50 people that are all competing for that, that's fine. You're going to have to figure it out. It'll help.
Good luck.
None of these solutions are perfect, by the way, because
Right, of
at
course.
the end of the day, we are doing the best that we can to accommodate player desires that are 100,000 people, and they all have different opinions, they all have different drivers, and it's also a hive mind, right? We've got to try and think through every system and outsmart every one of those players, and we can't. We're just not that.
It's impossible with any game, really. There's always going to be something the
very
player base
difficult.
comes up with that you're like,
They're like, oh
it's
my
like,
God,
why didn't
I
we
never
think of that?
saw
It's like, well, that's a million people. Like a million people all thinking together, trying like a Rubik's Cube are going to figure out a new way to do it,
Yeah, the min-maxing in this seems very very kind of like at that very tweaked level, like you can do some really cool stuff, and it sounds like it's fixing to, like you said, explode into something.
So I'll give you the warning, though. The warning that comes with this explosion is that some people are going to be pissed because their builds suck. But of course they do. That is the way an imbalanced system works, right?
Yeah.
When you build a system that has a massive, multiple millions of combinations, the idea that they're all going to be balanced is folly. Like, I'm not even claiming that. It wasn't even a goal.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that versus other games like New World, I think the level cap was like 60, and they had a 10-day preview. We played quite a bit of it, and it was like, man, you really had to try to get 60. Like for you guys, if your build sucks, make a new character, and within 5 to 6 hours, you're level 30.
We always talk about like this is overpowered without putting the context of in this situation on it, right?
Right.
Which is what I want to make sure is that we don't have. I want to knock down the high nails. If we have one character that's basically like they walk on the field, they one-shot everything, which we've seen in the past, we need to fix that. Like that's not what we want. But it shouldn't be that in every single combat situation this character is the best. In some situations, this one may be the best. In this one over here, they may be terrible and horribly weak.
Right.
If we hit that, then we've got that. Now it's. I don't want a simple like just rank everything 1 to 100 and the hundreds are the best.
And I feel like there's a lot of
the way it should work.
Strategy that you can throw into that, because like maybe Slayers are still going to be good, but they're only good if they come in, say like 30% into the fight. Like the fight has already happened for 30%, and then the Slayers come in and they wait to strategically attack after the champions and the knights and the confessors have kind of already done a lot of the work. Then all of a sudden the Slayers come in, and so I think that is what I see happening is going to happen in the future. Is you're going to have a lot of people who are going to try to be a little more strategic with their builds versus just like, oh my God, I'll murder everyone,
Well, and I want counter builds, right? Like, yeah, they are really great unless somebody built a bounty hunter counter build, in which case now they're going to get shut down. So that if we have
and you have the bounty hunter wait for the Slayer to come in to the fight, and then
absolutely, and then all of a
the
sudden
bounty hunter's in the back, and I love it. I think that's really gonna be great.
I think it's one of our communication challenges, though, right? Because players, because of the way that most MMOs are built, they expect all classes to be balanced against each other individually.
Yeah. And every choice to be a
our
great
game's
choice.
a multiplayer game. It's not so I can build a character that in a particular context against a particular kind of enemy is going to be almost unstoppable.
Right.
But what I should get is some bane that goes with that if I'm not in that context and I'm not up against that particular kind of enemy, I may be totally screwed.
All right.
Yeah.
It's that hard choices thing that I talked about earlier. So,
Yeah.
and our first cut at the races and classes and disciplines, it's impressive. It's already a pretty good number of combinations, but it didn't hit that. It was missing that piece right
Yeah.
there. That was a major
Kind of
part
the
of
expansion into different like branches on a tree. Like, oh, I want to go down this branch, and this branch or this limb, and this
Instead of being a
limb
bunch
has
of holes, just like, hey, we get to this,
Yeah.
we get to the top level of Slayer, and we're good. You're just like, oh, there's like 5 different kinds of Slayers that could be, and if I'm not this kind of Slayer when we're sneaking through the battlefield, then it's not going to really work.
Yeah.
Yeah, you also see a lot of times just like, hey, of this talent tree, take fork A because B and C suck, and that's a mistake, right? That's a problem in the system. It should never be that way. It should be like, oh, well, I took C, but I also took werewolf and crossbow expertise, and they're like, that's a bizarre combination. Yeah, but it means I can do this, and in this particular context, it actually works really well. Yeah,
like
it's OP
in that context. Exactly.
That's what I'm going for. That's what we're trying to get to. It's hard to do. It's not easy, but we're only doing the implementation now. We've actually been planning this now for a couple months, and we've been engaging with players and talking to them about about their classes and their choices and what they like about this power and don't like about that power. So
and
hopefully
when is that coming?
That's in the 6.200 version, which should probably be about a month and a half, I would think.
Month and a half, cool. Awesome.
Yeah, 5 or 6 weeks. That's a guess.
Yeah, right. Like,
I was actually going to ask like if you had a roadmap for the next update, but that kind of answers that.
Yeah, actually, so I will say our cadence in general has sped up. Oddly enough, this is by design. Like we sat down and talked about what we thought the right cadence would be, and we've been on a 5 or 6 week cadence now, really since beta started. Actually, maybe even
before that even.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's challenging because again, we're not like on somebody's milestone schedule, right? We're trying to hit certain quality markers, and sometimes that comes in on time, and sometimes it doesn't. Like we would like to ship what we have now already. It's not ready. When it's ready, we'll freaking ship it, right? Yeah. And then software still is more art than engineering in a lot of cases. And it's not just software, right? It's all the stuff that we put together is the problem.
Yeah.
If it was just software, we could probably make it a little bit more rigorous, but it's not. It's art, it's sound, it's gameplay.
So with that, with like the art of it kind of coming out, you guys, of course, like, you mentioned at the beginning of this, COVID has kind of like slowed you down, but it seems like you're still in, like you said, a 4 or 5 week cadence, which is pretty good, especially again for a independent studio, smaller independent studio compared to some of the big boys out there. And with 6.2 coming in a month and a half, do you guys have a plan on maybe releasing or putting the graveyards and some of the things back in there soon? I think they came out. That's the one reason we hadn't played it here in a little bit, is because we're kind of at that like weird tilting point where it's like we need to do necromancy and compete for the next campaign. So we need vessels, but we kind of don't know what the next campaign or when it's going to be, so we're kind of like at that like crossroads.
We're trying to get a campaign up right now with this new version. It's just that every day we come in and we check and say, okay, what blockers came in over the course of last night from either players, or we have a QA group actually overseas, so that while we're asleep, they're testing the latest version. And so we check every morning. We check the blockers and we ask, is today the day? It kills me when it's not.
Yeah.
It kills me when it's
not. Well, I think that's a big thing is Gordon mentioned earlier was like, that's why people, if they're not wanting to help develop the game, shouldn't jump in quite yet. Wait, let the people who are really passionate about it get in there, because those people I feel like are going to be more patient with y'all's schedule and the expectations. Exactly.
It's going to have bugs. I mean, in one of these milestones, right, they usually have a couple big ticket items like alliances, right, and mounts. Those were 2 of the big ticket items that came in this version. They also have like 5,000 bug fixes, just random things, just like all over the game. Like, hey,
the game don't break when you click this.
It doesn't highlight, and this particular tree over here in this corner of the castle for some reason doesn't have collision. It's just these things are monstrous.
And they have their own.
Like, hey, has this thing been fixed yet? And I'm like, that particular bug out of the 5,000, I cannot tell you if it's in this batch or the next batch. I can usually tell you, if it's a big one, I'm like, I've heard of it and I know it's in process, but I can't tell you where it is in the pipe, because it goes from like a developer's machine into one of our test environments, which I think there's like 4 or 5. Then it goes to the external overseas QA team. Then it goes to the test server. Then it goes live. So it's these are way more complicated than I think anybody would expect if they weren't actually involved in building one.
If you think about it, right? So we're a 65-person team. Every day we complete, 40 to 60 issues, actually get done and submitted. A certain percentage of those fail, right? So some 10% of them don't, they thought they worked on my machine, doesn't work on anybody else's.
Or they fix the bug and then 2 more bugs over there pop up.
That definitely happens all the time.
Yeah.
Constantly happens.
Or, something goes wrong with a piece of hardware in our build system and boom, we get a bad build and everybody runs around like screaming going, what happened? But then we find out, oh, wait, it's not software. It's actually somebody else's software that broke us.
You guys are playing a really impressive game of whack-a-mole. It is very impressive. You guys are really good at it.
Well, I think that people don't understand, like, it's a process too, right? You can't wake up in the morning and say, by the way, we'll just change these 3 things and it'll work out perfectly. We'll just fucking ship them, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. We literally
doesn't.
have to make sure every change didn't break something else. And the game is big enough now to where figuring that out is non-trivial. Even with we put, 160, 180 man hours on it before it goes to test, right?
Yeah.
The test, and then players playing on test do 5 times that. And even then it goes to live and it gets 10 times that, and we find more stuff.
Exactly. And I think players, if they were honest with themselves, would say, this is something that I learned from Destiny and my frustrations with Bungie, for a long time, is that, I'd rather you fix it now and give, if it adds another month, then you release it or you push it through, and then all of a sudden now you have to like stop stuff and like change things because you have to go back and fix something that's been buried by like another, like you said, another 180 hours, another 360 hours of stuff. And so I think that's something, if gamers were like really honest with themselves, they would realize like they would rather the job be done right the first time instead of having to go back and fix it later. You know?
Sure.
Yeah, and again, I've worked in some of those big companies. Nobody like intentionally goes, hey, let's break the players, right?
Yeah.
What happened is they miss something, which is easy to do. They do they spend all kinds of money trying to avoid that problem and then end up with that problem anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So
Murphy's Law.
It's very frustrating if you work in game software for sure. But in the end, you look like me if you do it long enough.
You're looking pretty good, man, for all the knowledge going on in there. You just your head couldn't hold.
Cooked my hair right off. See?
Yeah, your hair couldn't hold on to all the wisdom.
Gordon is the I think at this point the last man standing who has actually been to every single game developers conference since the first one.
Awesome.
Is that right?
No, there's one other guy who's made
Okay,
everyone to. I'm waiting
so
for him to die so I can
soon
stop.
it shall be the quickening, and
Yeah,
one of you shall take the head of the other one.
No question about who it's going to be. Don't even,
It's me. So I had one more thing before we kind of wrap up with there, and it kind of came up as we were talking. You were talking about like the explosion of the new kind of ways that you can take your character and your builds. Is there anything, and it just kind of popped in my head, is there anything on the horizon with major disciplines that maybe you take a major discipline that allows you a second capstone, but not a second major discipline? Like, because like you
not
get a
exactly,
confessor.
but so I'll give you a little preview of something that's happening in the system since you hit on this again, because it is pretty interesting. So we've actually divided disciplines up into domains or spheres. So you might have like death as a sphere or shadow as a sphere or whatever, and you can pick up spheres because sometimes your race will get one. Like, you might pick up a sphere that makes you particularly good at archery just because you're an elf, because that's a racial thing that they have.
Right.
Or your class can give you some because you just naturally get it because you're a knight. You get chivalry or whatever.
Gotcha.
Then in the talent trees now, we're reducing the number of talent points and making every single step along the tree is hugely impactful. So a single point is like a big, big deal. And sometimes along the trees, you can use a point to open up an entire new sphere, which gives you access to be able to equip all of those majors and minors that are in that
That's
sphere.
awesome.
So
really
it's
cool.
a really cool
That's really
system.
cool.
It means that I can choose to do that, but in doing it, I'm not taking something else in my base class. So effectively, I'm not quite as effective as a straight out assassin as I was.
Kind of cross classing.
But I can pick up this new thing that I otherwise would never have gotten access to. So part of this effort actually was also building a UI that almost acts like a wiki page to let you explore it, because it was already a big system that was complicated. Now we're opening it up to all this crazy amount of new combinations. So we had to also go through and build almost a knowledge base that while you're in the game, you can, and we'll probably make some of that external as well.
That was actually,
so you can actually go through and be like, okay, well, if I take the high road up here through the talent tree, I can actually get down here to this thing, which will let me pick up this thing. And then it's really
I
actually
can't wait
pretty
for the YouTube videos.
That's
I think
actually,
it's going to be awesome.
That's something I was going to ask about, is if there was any plans for like an in-game glossary. Like, I complete this, I combine 1 soft pelt and 2 tough pelt, and I get a successful recipe. I now have that in my glossary.
We need to do it for crafting too. You're right. Yeah, we haven't done it. I called it the Crowpedia internally, but we need to extend that out to recipes and crafting and harvesting and passive skills as well.
I say even maybe
I think it'll go a long way to making the game a lot more scrutable, because it's inscrutable right now.
That's something that not only like explaining that, but then saying, like, once I've killed 10 pigs. Now my glossary says, hey, did you know pigs drop these items so you can get, onions, garlic, this kind of pelt, this kind of meat, and then when you cook 10 times with that meat, it's like, oh, now you know that pig meat kebabs give you this buff. That's something I feel like could really help people.
It's right now
expand.
The system is kind of bottom up. Like, you can look at a talent tree and say, okay, I want to go there. What we don't really have is a good top down, to where it's like, I found this discipline in the game. What kind of characters might I build to be able to get to it? So being able to kind of walk down the tree as well is not something the game does very well. But when you get that going, that's when it's really exciting. Like D&D Beyond, I don't know if y'all are D&D players, but D&D Beyond does a great job of this, where you can build a class. Like, I want to make the coolest Shadow Sorcerer, and you build it up. Or you can say, man, I really want to play an Archer and somehow get haste. Okay, so looking at haste, how do I drill my way down to all the characters that can unlock that? And then from there, kind of theory build what my character is going to be. I like that, because you're playing the game when you're not even logged into the game.
Right? Yeah, you're like, I think that's kind of what every gamer wants, is they want to go to bed like thinking about the game and wake up like, oh man, I can't wait to get back in there.
Try this build out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, that didn't work. I'm
actually super excited about it. I mean, the performance impacts is kind of the #1 priority for this coming version, but this race class discipline stuff that we're doing, to me, is going to be just as impactful, especially for the long timers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, guys, we really appreciate it. Gordon, JTodd, thank you so much for coming on the stream. We're going to give away some keys so we can get some more people in there playing and hanging out.
Well, we might, when we put this on YouTube, there might be a key or two in the description. You never know. It happens sometimes.
Gotta go watch it. Everyone's like, ETA on Dregs. It's coming soon, guys.
Pretty much what we've gathered. As soon as they get the check mark saying everything's good to go.
Yeah.
I wish it was today.
Yeah, I know, right?
It'll happen when it happens, boys. Be glad that you got a mount. Be glad that hopefully the digging will come back shortly, and we'll be able to do necromancy.
And they said when the next campaign drops, alliances should be in it, so that's going to be a game changer for sure. That's for me, that's going to be the big one, because there's not only is it helpful for just alliances like building groups, but even sometimes with some of those big, there's like 200 people in a guild. They can't tell every single person, hey, this is our alliance. Don't attack them.
Yeah, don't smack them.
So them showing up as an alliance is really a benefit.
That's cool. I think we did put another one on test today, didn't we, Gordon?
I think I saw the notification for that.
We're trying
actually
to get a version out. Then that's where it'll go first. It'll go to test so that people can vet it and go, yeah, it looks good, and then from there it'll go to live. So fingers crossed.
Up on test within the next hour. So yeah.
Yep. Awesome. I mean, it's a constant build cycle for us.
For sure. Yeah. I'm in the Discord, and I would say I'm constantly seeing the notifications, and it makes me happy. I'm like, new build. That's what I like to see. Almost every day I get some sort of notification like, hey, this has been changed, or hey, tomorrow this will be implemented for the test server. So it's really.
And I see a lot of people in there talking and asking questions or commenting. Guys, go to the forums, go talk to them, get in their Discord. talk to them, share what you have to say, because I feel like you guys and I think Ashes of Creation, Steven Sheriff or Sharif, I don't know how you pronounce it. I feel like you guys are really setting the bar for transparency and communication with gamers that play your game for the development of a game that's not even out yet. And I think that's really impressive and incredible. And we really appreciate you guys coming on.
That's cool. Well, thanks for supporting us, guys. Thanks for playing. And it's really cool.
It's really easy.
I'm glad you got a guild, and we'll get you some vessel. We'll get you some vessel parts soon.
Yeah, thanks, man. Hey, we appreciate it. And if anybody wants to join the guild, !CF Guild in chat. And again, go to the forum, go to Twitter, go to wherever you guys feel comfortable. Talk to them because they want to hear from you.
And we're posting this, so if you missed anything or you showed up at the end, we'll be able to. You'll be able to go over this. I feel like I saw there's a few times you guys said something, and people in chat, they'd be like, "Whoa, Gordon just spoke the truth over here." They're, JTodd's out here. That's what I wanted to hear. So that's exciting.
Good luck on your quest there, Gordon, to be the last man standing.
Oh yeah,
we believe in you.
The next event, they're gonna have a battle royale.
You don't win the end quest, right? In the end, they get you, but you want to be last.
Exactly. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
So who were those guys?